It's not just talk, it's business travel talk. For the latest and greatest on all things business travel, go to businesstraveltalk.com. That's us. Hi, I'm Ben, and I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing one of the most respected voices in travel, in my opinion, and also a dear friend, Kerin McKinnon, who is the Vice President of Business Development with CTM. I had the pleasure of getting to know Kerin last year at TAMS Ignite 2025, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And before you really introduce yourself, Kerin, I always like to ask kind of my attention getter question, which is, as you look back on your extremely impressive career, what is one of the most significant moments or impacts that you've made?
My general thought on that is advocacy and volunteerism. Like you, we share that desire to help, and the industry's been good to me, so I feel compelled to give back. But my favorite thing to talk about it, so thanks for asking this question, is TSA PreCheck. So for many years, I was a government liaison with GBTA, and they have these legislative summits every year, as does ASTA. I do participate with them as well. But this was with GBTA. In 2013, we started advocating and lobbying on Capitol Hill for TSA PreCheck, and it wasn't passed until 2018. So that shows you how slow the government rolls and how persistent you have to be to get things done. But I enjoyed it so much, and it was very bipartisan. So people on both sides of the aisle came together to pass this legislation that was good for business travel. And I am proud of that. And sometimes I'm tempted in the TSA line to say, "You're welcome." But it was really a massive group effort, so I can't take the credit. But it was just, I am proud of that. And it was such an exciting thing to be part of.
Now I'm going to think about you every time I'm going through TSA PreCheck. I'm so thankful that it's although I will say the secret's out. Sometimes the TSA PreCheck line is equally as long, but we still don't have to deal with some of the precautions and security issues or
the laptop
nuances.
stays in and the shoes stay on.
So I've got a lot of questions for you, and I know our viewers are going to be so interested to learn about the topics we're going to cover. Before we dive in, would you mind kind of just sharing who you are, what you do, and where you do it?
I've always been in kind of the global, I started in hotels, but I've mostly been in the global, more complex, larger account sales on the TMC side. So I'm currently with CTM, and I'm responsible for the kind of the mid-Atlantic on up for large account sales, strategic accounts. And I work for CTM. They're a global company based out of Australia. But in my spare time, like you, I am very devoted as the chair of the board of TAMS. That's been a big focus of mine this last year.
Something that I have fell in love with, maybe not as much as you because I don't know enough about it. That might change at the end of this, but it's human trafficking. I recently put a little video up on one of my files, and it became very popular with our audiences. And so when I saw there was so much interest in learning more about identifying human trafficking and just what surrounds that, I couldn't think of a better person to ask to come on the show than you. I know you're very vocal in preventing human trafficking, providing awareness for human trafficking, and I'm curious, what brought you to that specifically?
Yeah, a very specific person. I had zero awareness, really. And I don't think I'm the anomaly. I would say that most people have very little awareness, never mind in just our industry, just in general. You think it's something that happens elsewhere. It doesn't happen to people in your town, in your state, in your neighborhood, in your family, amongst your friends. We just don't think that way in general. And it wasn't until I actually met a victim, not on purpose. I was I spent a lot of years traveling, doing service trips to Haiti. And the organization that I went with, they also had like a city teen center in central Massachusetts. And there was a woman working for the organization that had gone through that teen center as a teen and had actually been kind of rescued by the founders of the organization.
Wow.
And she was, I think, 20 years old. And we were just having a conversation. I was trying to get to know her. And she was very forthright in telling me her story. So she was 10 and her younger sister was 8. They were living in the projects in Worcester, Mass. And they were traded for drugs, sex for drugs. And they were children. And I could not get her story out of my head. And what really struck me the most was that because this family intervened in her life, I am not saying in any way, shape, or form she's fully recovered from that experience, because how would a child ever be fully recovered from that? However, she's thriving. She's working.
Okay.
She's in a, romantic relationship. She's has friends and family and faith in a church space and a lot of support. However, her younger sister did not have that intervention. Many victims are exposed to drugs right out of the gate because it keeps them compliant. And her drug addiction brought her to overdose after overdose. She had a couple children taken from her into the system. And, if I could guess, she may not be in this world anymore. But I never forgot their stories. And it just hit me that this was in my state, not far away from where I live. And it just really hit me. And I just kind of had this epiphany that the travel industry might be able to do something.
Yeah.
And that's where it all started. So, that was a little long-winded, but that is what really got me compelled to do something, anything.
When you say, they started at such a young age, you shared previously a video with me, and I have chills as I just think of that video of a child who is in and out of hotels, and she shares a story, and she lied about her age, and she turns out she was 13 years old, and she looked up at the different hotels and she saw someone behind like the concierge or the check-in, and they always noticed something, but they looked away. And when she said looked away, that's something that it's less than a 2-minute video, Kerin, and I'm never gonna forget that moment. The look away is the reason I want to ask this next question is, so many people believe that identifying and preventing human trafficking is someone else's problem. And based on what you've seen, is how does someone get involved, and how does someone help identify who is being trafficked?
And I understand that. First of all, it's a dark topic, and I understand that. What I hope from the bottom of my heart is that we as an industry can bring light and hope and change. And that's where I have to live in my head. Otherwise, this is dark and it is scary and it's uncomfortable. And I do understand that. And I do think also that every single one of us, we all have an intuitive piece of ourselves. And we all know the feeling of not listening to the voice. We all know that feeling. And I can see it. I can feel it. A front desk clerk, a gate agent, somebody being like, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. But how do you know? I mean, there is no hard evidence. So you feel funny, you feel awkward, but there is, first of all, it's just a matter of education, learning what the signs are. That's a big part of it. And then also how to report, how to do something, and you can do it completely anonymously. There's now a pretty sophisticated app called SimplyReport, where there's really algorithms and AI working in the background where you put the information in. This is what I just observed. Someone behind the scenes is evaluating it. Is that a legitimate trafficking situation? And then they're going to act on it. You're not acting on it. You're simply reporting it anonymously. So I think once people are comfortable with the signs, that's just education. We can certainly do that. And secondly is, what do I do about it? It doesn't have to be scary or big, or you're not going into a courtroom nobody's asking that of anybody. But could you report it anonymously on an app on your phone that takes 2 seconds? And that takes the mystery out of it, because most people are like, I don't know. Now the resources exist to interpret your bad feeling, make a decision, and then act. You don't have to do any of that. Once we take a little mystery out, we diffuse some of the myths, we arm them with the right information, and then we give them a solution that isn't so scary.
I know as soon as we're through here, I'm going to download that app and
Simply
I'm going.
Report. I just found it. Honestly, I was on a Delta flight and they have a 21-minute documentary, Just One Call. That's what the name of it. And they mentioned the app, and I put it on my phone while I was in flight.
And I love that Delta had that available. Was it
Yeah.
provided by Delta?
Yeah, promoted by Delta. I don't know who actually put the documentary together, but I'm glad you brought that up, because there are certainly Meeting Planners International, Marriott, Delta. There are organizations and suppliers in our industry that are doing something.
Mhm.
I think where we're lacking is connectivity. Like, what can we all do together? Where are the resources we can work together? So everybody isn't out there kind of doing their own thing. I think that's where we need change.
We both work in business travel and meetings. This is such a beautiful industry that we're trying to bring more attention to. But I think in that, we need to bring more attention to part of the bad parts as well. In your opinion, how is the travel and meetings industry uniquely positioned to maybe unknowingly enable trafficking, or
Yeah.
ideally actively disrupting it from happening?
Yeah, I think the two sides are, and I know you've heard me use this term, and it's uncomfortable still for me to say it, that we're complicit. We're involuntarily complicit. It's really important to have the conversation. The industry, this $236.7 billion industry called human trafficking, with 27 million victims, they refer to these children, boys, girls, even young adults, as or adults, because there's the whole labor force. That's a whole nother side of trafficking. It's not just sex trafficking, but they call them product. I know it's really difficult to hear, but that's what they're considered.
Yeah.
Product. They're not given any humanity. They're considered product. No different from a drug. It's
Mhm.
just the drug trade. And we, as an industry, are moving the product on our planes. We're housing in our hotels.
Mhm.
We're moving in car rentals, on trains, in black car service. That's a fact.
Yeah.
So are we part of it? A little bit. But what I really want to focus is on the flip side. We have an army. We have an army. We have millions of travelers and millions of employees. We are a bigger industry than human trafficking. So what does
Amen.
that mean? We have an army of eyes and ears. So what if those millions of eyes and ears in our industry became educated, started the training, got certified, kept their ears and eyes open, pledged to make a difference, and what would happen? I'm not naive. Are we going to shut down human trafficking? In my lifetime, probably not. In your lifetime, maybe. I'm addicted to hope and potential. Can we make an impact? Absolutely no doubt in my mind.
You do conduct trainings and you help provide education. So, and I know that we're giving a certification with Harvard Business School at our TAMS Ignite 2026. But I'm curious, for those that are not able to maybe attend for whatever reason,
Yep.
what are a couple of the critical warning signs?
That's a great question. I'll give just a few quick tips. And again, these are hard to hear. Tattoos are common in the back of the neck. Sometimes they're barcodes and sometimes they're dollar signs. That absolutely it exists. But more common things to look for would be an adult with a child, no luggage. Very odd to be getting on and off a plane with no luggage, just no backpack, no carry-on. That would be a red flag. Disengagement, a child or even a young woman or young man that does not want to make eye contact with you, a fellow passenger, with the flight attendant, with the front desk. Drugs. I mean, the kind of glazed eyes, disengaged, that look that they're out of it. A child or young adult, young man or woman, they look, under the influence of something. That would be a red flag. And the tough thing about this is the victims often not that they don't want to get rescued, but it isn't easy as you think. And some of these people, they're not imprisoned. Some of them are living out and about, but they have been so conditioned, they've been so brainwashed or drug dependent or threatened their families will be killed, that they will willingly stay in the lifestyle, even if approached to be rescued. So that's we could do a whole nother hour on that. But that's why it's important to just recognize the signs and rely on experts to take it from there. And there's hotlines, there's a national 800, there's so many resources. See something, say something. It sounds so basic, but just do something. And even if, what is the very worst that can happen? You know, some gentleman, dad is walking his child to the bathroom without luggage, and you say something, it'll get evaluated and somebody will check it out. Somebody gets embarrassed. You know what? If myself as a parent, I would welcome the fact that people actually care about other people's children, and you know, you upset somebody. Is that the worst that can happen? I think it's okay.
These seem fairly obvious, but if I'm just going to call myself out, I've never thought about these. The barcode on the arm, the tattoo on the neck, the dollar sign. Now I'm going to know what to look for, but it's so
Yeah,
valuable, and I'm so appreciative that you're here sharing this with all of us. And I just want to say, you've mentioned now Simply Report and an 800 number, so I am going to put resources at the end of this video and the outro. I
that would
am going
be,
to
I would
list.
love to help you, like give you a few suggestions on what to add at the end for resources. Yeah. And you
Absolutely.
you brought up a good point about awareness is the flip side is where are we usually at the airport? We're in our phones. I mean, does it hurt to take a look around the plane or around the gate? Does it hurt when you're checking in a hotel to just look around? I mean,
Mhm.
a few moments away from your phone for a second, we're just so conditioned to be not paying attention. Awareness is one thing, but you have to pay attention to begin with in order to be aware. So,
Absolutely. When I was in Europe, they actually have signs on the ground that say no texting and walking. Yeah, you're walking down and you see it's like no te in a different language. I think it was in France, Paris, and it says, look up, no texting and walking when you're at the crosswalks and all that.
I
And
love it.
yeah.
I love it.
We talk about duty of care, right? We talk about, at least for me, I talk about the duty of care for the passenger. And what, I know a lot of travel managers are always focused on safety. And I know I attend conventions and trade shows and seminars, and as do you. We met at one. And I'm curious, do you think that duty of care and corporate responsibility comes down to not forcing this education, but making this education so readily available and
Yeah.
obvious? I know
Yep.
we're doing something with TAMS, we're teaching people about this industry. Do you think it should be our responsibility to include a course about human trafficking awareness?
Yeah, I would love that. I would absolutely love that. So, this is another area that has always intrigued me since 9/11. Lost a coworker and a client. And I was fascinated that the TMC I worked for at the time, we were being flooded with phone calls from people that didn't know where their spouse was or where their coworker was, and so I was always intrigued with duty of care. And
Mhm.
it originated with Occupational Health and Safety Administration, the OSHA, and it had to do with safety in the workplace. And it was more meant for people falling off ladders, but it
Yeah.
evolved. And I think 9/11 was instrumental in kind of guiding duty of care law and liability into, it isn't just the work. The workplace had to be redefined for the
Mhm.
corporate travel world because we travel. So what's our workplace? It's the plane, it's the gate, it's the hotel, and
Mhm.
keeping us safe in those environments. So it's kind of evolved. And I think when it comes to human trafficking, there isn't a lot. I wish there was more legislation and more law around it. But I can tell you that there have been significant lawsuits with hotel chains. And I'm not talking about, another myth is this is happening in this little strip motel in a really lousy part of town. That is not what's happening, unfortunately. So there have been major lawsuits, litigation by victims that have escaped, that have basically said the hotel knew. So
Wow.
yes, hotels have a legal obligation to keep their guests safe, and a
Yeah.
child in a human trafficking situation is not safe. And so I would like to think that as an industry, regardless of law and liability, we will find a heart to do this because it's the right thing to do.
Mhm.
And because we have the courage to do it.
Yes, that's another takeaway that I got from the video that you shared with me is it opens up by, it's a hotel bed, and then it talks about, with this narrator, I've been in some of the nicest hotels. I've been in some of the worst hotels. And this is the third time I've gotten chills during this interview, but it really is not subject to one specific low end motel. It seems that it's happening everywhere.
If you really think about it, this is a money industry. It's a for-profit industry. And who can afford to spend money on something this dark? Unfortunately, it's people with the means and the
Yeah.
money to do so. They're not the people in a strip mall motel.
Mhm.
They're in places where they don't think anyone's going to look for this.
Wow. I'm sorry. I'm like, whoo, it really
Yeah,
is.
it's a
It really
tough.
is.
I get that it is a, and every time I talk about it, I try to lead with, I know it's dark,
Yeah.
but if we can just commit together to learn so we can do something, then there's light. We can come out of the darkness if we're doing something.
So speaking of doing something, you mentioned earlier that you're with CTM, and I'm curious if it's okay. I'd like to ask, is there any prevention or education coming from CTM?
One of the things I felt so grateful for in this role at CTM is I went right to the our president CEO in the Americas, Anita Salvatore, because she's a Massachusetts person and I'm a Massachusetts person. And I knew of her, but in my new role, one of the first things I did was call her and say, here's the thing. I am really committed to doing something about human trafficking in our industry. And she heard me out and she gave a significant amount of money to TAMS so that we could run a customized training and certification at TAMS Ignite. So
Okay.
everyone who attends TAMS Ignite will get trained, will get certified. In addition to that, they have also they allowed me an opportunity quite recently. Business Travel Executive had their T&E Summit in Cape Coral, Florida, and they were a significant sponsor of that event so that I could go speak to that group of buyers about human trafficking. So they gave me 45 minutes on the agenda to kind of do what you and I are doing. I'm just so grateful because, there's no financial benefit to a for-profit company doing this. Anita is a courageous person who cares, and she has really thrown CTM's backing behind this.
Mhm.
And I feel so supported and encouraged because this isn't fun to do. It is hard. I guess there's other things they could be doing that would maybe help profits or, more easy to talk about. Like everyone wants to go clean up the beach, the trash on the beach, but that's awesome. And I know you do so much of that volunteerism. This one's harder. The fact that they care enough to get behind me in doing something about it is I don't want it to go unnoticed or I want them to know how grateful I am for that.
I think it's so special that they see the value in not only
Me
you, but
too.
what you're offering to the masses.
Thank you for giving me that opportunity to shout out to them because obviously I do things like this on their clock. So it's the middle of my workday and I'm allowed to do things like this. So I appreciate the opportunity to thank them.
Just a couple more questions for you. I know
Okay.
you're a busy individual, but I think it's worth diving into these. We talked about certification quite a bit. For those that are attending TAMS Ignite 2026 at Harvard on April 13th and 14th, can you talk a little bit about what the certification looks like? What can they expect if they're joining?
So PACT is the organization we've employed to come launched, they actually created the certification just for our industry, just
Mhm.
to be launched at TAMS. It'll be the first time.
Oh,
So I believe, I'm hoping Anita that I mentioned will come introduce the session because they're sponsoring this particular session and project. So I think they'll say a couple words, and then the PACT folks are going to, they'll probably run a video much like the one you referenced,
mhm.
because you need to get everyone's attention. You need everyone to be really quiet and engaged and not on their phones. So we will run some type of brief clip to kind of have that immediate impact. And then the PACT folks, there's two of them, they're going to get up and they'll present and train, and they'll talk about some of the things you and I are talking about, what to look for and that sort of thing. And I think that presentation will be, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. And then everyone will be given an opportunity to take the certification on their phone. We are giving out, I'm kind of excited about this as well. I'm so glad you reminded me. We are giving about the session, we are giving out journals that people can take notes. I know it's old school and maybe not too sustainable, but we are giving out journals that are actually made by victims that
Oh my gosh.
work for an organization called Rethreaded. And Rethreaded does two very cool things. First of all, everything they make is repurposed. So they make things like passport holders, journals, all sorts of things. And they might repurpose, for example, Southwest airline seats, like seats that are older, they might
Mhm.
repurpose those. So everybody that attends will get a journal to take their notes. And Rethreaded is the name of the organization. It's a nonprofit. Every single employee that creates these products is a former victim. So everyone will be able to take notes during the presentation and then write on their phone through Cvent. We'll have the test, and people go through, answer the questions, and you'll get certified live right there on the spot. And then the very end of that session, we have also engaged with Harvard Business School. So we have a project through one of the professors there, and there is a student, a Harvard Business School student, and he, along with a buyer that is a project leader for TAMS, they are writing a research paper about human trafficking in the industry. So in addition to getting certified and getting this beautiful journal, this keepsake, people will leave with a white paper. So they will be able to bring this research back to their company so they have something to share.
I had no idea it was to that level and magnitude.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
A year ago, this was just a thought.
Yeah.
And so really kudos out to PACT, to Rethreaded, to the project leader, Mary Ellen Eager. She's at a company called Bright Star. She's the buyer that led the project. To CTM, just everybody, to Harvard Business School and the Professor Tepslad that led us there. This was absolutely a village that came together in less than a year to create this amazing opportunity for our attendees.
Thank you for doing that. I have two more. For those that are feeling a bit overwhelmed by this topic, what are one or two actions they can go from awareness to impact?
I love that question. One of my goals is to eventually house everything in one place for the industry. SimplyReport at opening screen says, "Welcome, Kerin. Thanks for doing your part to help stop human trafficking." And then there's a little click where you can report, and you're basically kind of chatting. And I made this observation at the airport, at Gate 8, at Boston Logan Airport, Delta Terminal, whatever. You give, and I thought this child didn't look like they had a connection with the adult. Their eyes looked glazed. They didn't have luggage. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Put all that information in. They decide, is this realistically a situation? They decide what to do about it. Cost you nothing. Cost you nothing. Just put that on your phone. Have it just in case. Read. Just, you can do the research. That's where I started and where I was just completely blown away by the data and the statistics. So you can read, research the app, put the phone down, be aware of your surroundings, take a look around. Yeah, and come to TAMS and get certified.
Shout out TAMS, absolutely. So then my last question to bring this to a little bit of a positive ending. You are such a leader, a respected leader, and someone that I just trust you and I resonate with you. And I love watching you when you're on stage and even just having our one-on-one conversations. And leadership is something that is so vital to everyone's growth. I would not be where I am today without powerful, impactful leaders. And you are absolutely one of those. So I'm curious, where did you get your leadership skills?
Oh my gosh, this is like a little bit of a God wink to me because um oh, now I'm gonna cry. I didn't want to cry. I thought we were gonna my dad was a senator and he was a human rights activist
Mm,
and he fought for things that were not popular at the time in the 70s and 80s, early 90s. And he was
mm,
kind of they called him the Senate rebel back in the day because he was willing, he had courage.
mm,
And he actually had an extreme fear of public speaking and being in leadership roles, like extreme. So much so he was president of his class and he was going to join the army to avoid speaking at graduation. And then he became this just phenomenal speaker. But he did really, first of all, he inspired me to look outside myself and to help others and to be lifted up by doing so. So that was my inspiration for kind of doing the right thing. But he always said that if you have passion, real strong passion for something, a cause, or that the speaking part will just come
mhm.
naturally. Like you got to do your homework, you got to do your research. But if you have passion, then you will be a better leader. You will be a better speaker if you have that. And
Yeah.
I think that stuck with me because honestly, if I had to get up in front of a room full of people and talk about, you know, data and reporting in the travel industry or something, I'd probably be a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
So I do think it is easier to lead and easier to have courage and easier to get up in front of people if that cause is meaningful and you have passion around it. I could do this all day on this topic.
Your passion radiates and it influences and it impacts. I'm impacted by your passion. You can see Kerin at TAMS Ignite 2026. We will have resources to identify and report these different human trafficking issues. And to everyone watching, thank you. Kerin, thank you so, so much
Well,
for being
thank
here
you for
today.
giving me the platform to talk about it. And again, I just want to end with we're an army. We're an army. The travel industry, we have an army of travelers and employees. Imagine what we can do.